The stars stretched endlessly across the black velvet of space, sparkling like tiny diamonds scattered across an infinite canvas. In the quiet hum of his exploration pod, Elias Carter sat alone, staring at the small cracked screen that reflected the tired lines of his own face. For weeks, or maybe months, he had drifted through the emptiness, unsure if he was even alive or just a memory floating in the dark. According to the pod's logs, 105 years had passed since he last heard a human voice. 105 years. The number burned in his mind like a weight he could never lift. He had left Earth as an engineer on a mission to study distant star systems, a journey meant to last only a few years. But the wormhole had appeared without warning, tearing his ship from its path. When he woke up, time had moved faster outside, swallowing the world he had known. Civilization had changed. Humanity had vanished, or so he assumed. The silence from the Federation, the empty communication channels, and the cold hum of his pod were all he had left. When the pod finally landed on a planet labeled Valaris Prime, Elias expected nothing but silence and desert. He expected to find ruins or maybe nothing at all. Instead, the world that greeted him was alive. The air smelled sweet, like fresh rain mixed with flowers he could not name. Trees with luminous leaves stretched toward twin suns, and crystal towers reflected colors he had never imagined. And then he saw them, the people who would change his life forever. Hundreds of alien women had gathered around the landing site. They were taller than humans, graceful, with silver eyes that seemed to glow faintly, and soft skin that shimmered under the light of their suns. Their hair flowed like liquid metal, braided in intricate patterns, and their armor gleamed as they stood in cautious silence. They were unlike anything he had seen before, and yet their faces carried an almost human warmth. When they noticed him, a wave of shock and disbelief rippled through the crowd. Whispers floated through the air, fragile and stunned. "Is that a male?" one voice asked, trembling. "Impossible," another whispered. Human males vanished over a century ago. Elias could feel their eyes on him, curious, fearful, reverent. The leader of the group stepped forward. Commander Lyra Vena moved with calm authority, though her silver eyes were wide, betraying her awe. Her voice was soft but firm. "Human male," she said. "You should not exist." Elias lowered his helmet, letting his tired brown eyes meet hers. "Maybe I shouldn't," he said slowly, his voice rough from years without conversation. "But I am here." The crowd fell silent. Some of the women knelt instinctively, as if they were honoring a living legend. Others took small steps back, as if a ghost had appeared before them. Lyra approached cautiously, every movement precise, measured. How have you survived?" she asked. Her voice wavered slightly. "I don't know," Elias admitted, his lips curling into a faint, tired smile. "The stars kept me alive. Maybe someone wanted me to be here. Or maybe it's just luck." Lyra studied him, her mind racing. "Your kind? We thought it was gone. 105 years ago, the last human male perished. All of our daughters grew up believing humans were myths, legends from a time we could only read about." Elias felt a strange ache in his chest. He had been alone for a lifetime, a ghost in a world that moved on without him. And now he was surrounded by beings who had lived without humans, survived without them, yet still held a fragile memory of his species. "You remember us?" he whispered. Lyra nodded. "We remember, and we cannot believe you are here." As he followed her and her entourage toward the heart of their city, Elias felt every eye watching him. He was not just a visitor. He was a bridge between two worlds, one that had vanished and one that had survived. And for the first time in over a century, he felt the weight of something heavier than loneliness, the weight of hope. The twin suns dipped low over the horizon, painting the crystalline towers in soft gold. Elias's heart beat faster. He had crossed time itself, and now, in the middle of a world that had forgotten men, he was no longer alone. The city of Valaris Prime seemed alive with a quiet energy that Elias had never felt before. Crystal towers reflected the twin suns, painting the streets with warm, shimmering colors. Everywhere he stepped, soft hums of machinery mingled with the rustle of wind through glowing vines. And yet, the silence that followed him was heavier than the wind, a silence full of disbelief, awe, and questions too complex for words. Hundreds of alien women lined the streets as he walked, their silver eyes fixed on him. Their expressions were a mixture of shock, curiosity, and something Elias could only describe as awe. Some whispered to each other in a language he couldn't understand, while others tilted their heads, studying him like a delicate artifact from a forgotten time. He had expected fear. He had expected hostility, but this was something else entirely. Commander Lyra Vena led him through the crowd with measured steps. Her armor gleamed softly in the sunlight, and her long hair braided with silver threads swayed as she moved. Despite her calm exterior, her eyes betrayed the emotions she tried to hide. Astonishment, hope, and an unspoken question. Could a human male truly be standing here, alive, after more than a century? "You are real," whispered one woman behind the crowd, her voice trembling like glass. "I thought they were only stories. They said men were gone," another murmured, staring at Elias with wide eyes. "All of them. Extinct." Elias felt a lump rise in his throat. Words failed him. After months of silence and solitude, the sound of voices, fearful, shocked, reverent, was almost overwhelming. He could see it in their eyes. Hope, disbelief, and the echo of a memory that had survived despite the years. Lyra stopped at the edge of a grand plaza made entirely of crystal, the ground shimmering with soft golden light. She turned to him, her gaze steady, though her hands trembled slightly. "You should not exist here," she said softly. "Your presence, it challenges everything we believed about ourselves, about our history." "I'm not sure I should exist," Elias admitted. His voice was raw and fragile, like the edges of a long-lost song. "But I am, somehow. I am here." The crowd stirred, whispers rising into a soft murmur of voices. Some of the women knelt instinctively, paying respect to a being they believed was lost to the past. Others took cautious steps back, unsure whether to welcome or fear him. Every eye followed him as he moved, a human among a civilization that had survived without him for more than a century. Lyra's expression softened. She stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "Our records say that the last human male died long ago. We thought your kind was gone forever. And now here you stand before us." Elias felt a strange ache twist in his chest. Loneliness had been his companion for so long, but this was heavier. He had survived the void, outlasted the stars, and now he faced beings who had learned to thrive without humans. And yet they were looking at him as if he carried the weight of a promise they had almost forgotten. I don't know why I'm here," he whispered. "Maybe luck, maybe something else. But I want to help, if I can." Lyra nodded slowly, studying him for a long moment. "Then you will have a place among us. Not just as a curiosity, but as a bridge. You remind us of what was lost. And maybe, what can be found again." Elias followed her through the plaza, feeling every gaze upon him. Children peeked from behind pillars. Mothers held their daughters closer, and elders nodded silently, some with tears brimming in their eyes. He was not just a man. He was a symbol, an impossible living proof that humanity had not completely vanished from the universe. As the twin suns set, painting the city in soft amber and rose, Elias allowed himself to feel something he had almost forgotten: hope. For the first time in over a century, he was not alone, and for the first time in over 100 years, the galaxy felt like it might still have room for humanity. Elias followed Lyra through the grand gates of the Crystal City, his eyes wide with wonder. Every corner of Valorous Prime seemed alive with history. Tall towers hummed softly with energy, gardens glowed with strange light, and murals on walls depicted figures that looked part human, part alien, working side by side. He could almost hear the echoes of laughter, conversation, and shared discoveries from centuries past. Lyra led him into a vast archive, a hall of crystal and glass that reflected the twin suns outside in thousand-fold patterns. Rows of data crystals and holographic screens filled the space, each containing records of a past that Elias barely recognized. He ran a hand over the smooth surface of a crystal, feeling a strange connection to memories that were not his own. "Here," Lyra said, pointing to a holographic timeline. "This is our history with humans. We had allies once, your people. You helped us survive when we were close to extinction." Elias leaned closer, studying images of tall, strong human men standing beside alien women, sharing knowledge, technology, and even DNA. He saw scientists and engineers working side by side, teaching each other. He felt a pang in his chest. These faces, these hands, these smiles, they were echoes of a humanity he had almost forgotten. Lyra's voice broke the silence. 105 years ago, the last human male left, or died. After that, we tried to carry on alone. Our women learned to survive without you. Our children grew up believing humans were myths, stories told by elders to remind them of hope. Elias swallowed hard. The weight of it pressed against his chest. I had no idea. My people. We didn't survive long enough to come back. I thought we were trying to reach you. I thought we'd come before it was too late. Lyra looked at him, her silver eyes softening. Your people tried, but time was not kind. Still, our daughters grew strong. Our cities thrived. But we never forgot. Every child born carried a longing for what your kind represented. Strength, courage, and companionship. Elias's mind raced. He had spent decades drifting through space, surviving alone, believing he was the last human alive. And now, here were beings who had waited, survived, and built a civilization without him. And yet, in some quiet corner of their hearts, they had never stopped hoping for the return of one man. Then, I am not too late? He asked quietly. Lyra's lips curled into the faintest smile. No, you're not too late. Your arrival, it is more than a miracle. It is a chance to rebuild what was lost. To reconnect two species that shared so much before fate pulled them apart. Elias felt a strange warmth rise inside him. For the first time in decades, he didn't feel like a ghost drifting through a world that had moved on. He felt like a part of something bigger than himself, something worth fighting for. Lyra led him to a corner of the archive where the records detailed Valerian struggles after humanity vanished. Diseases, failed experiments, failed colonies, yet through all of it, the alien women endured. Their strength was astonishing. Their resilience, almost unimaginable. You see this? Lyra said softly, touching a holographic image of a young girl with silver eyes. She will never know her father, but now, maybe she can. Elias swallowed, his throat tight. I can help. I don't know how much, but I want to try. Lyra's eyes glimmered. You will. You already have. Just by being here, you remind us of what is possible. You remind us that even after 105 years of silence, hope can still return. Elias stood silently, looking at the records of lives built without him. He had come to this world alone, a relic of humanity's past. Yet in their eyes he saw acceptance, gratitude, and a spark of wonder he hadn't seen in decades. For the first time since the wormhole had swallowed him, he allowed himself to believe. Hope was not gone. Humanity was not entirely lost. And perhaps, just perhaps, a single man could change the course of a civilization that had been waiting for him all along. Life on Valeris Prime was both beautiful and strange for Elias. Every morning, he awoke to the glow of twin suns streaming through his quarters, painting his pod and the surrounding gardens in soft gold and silver. The alien women who lived in the city stared at him with a mixture of curiosity and reverence, as if every step he took was a reminder of a long-lost promise. Despite their initial awe, not all of them were welcoming. Some whispered behind closed doors, questioning whether he belonged among them, whether one human male could truly fit into a civilization that had survived without men for more than a century. Lyra stayed by his side, guiding him through the city, introducing him to scholars, scientists, and engineers. They examined him carefully, not with malice but with fascination. Genetic scans, medical tests, and psychological evaluations became daily routines. Every procedure reminded Elias of his uniqueness, his singularity, and the fragile hope he carried for an entire species. The Valerians had survived and thrived without humans, yet his very existence stirred something deep within them. Memories, longing, and dreams deferred. One quiet evening, after another long day of testing, Lyra led Elias to a hidden garden, a place untouched by the bustle of the city. Bioluminescent vines hung overhead, glowing softly while fragrant flowers swayed gently in a warm breeze. It was a sanctuary, a place where the Valerians came to grieve and reflect. They're afraid, Lyra said softly, her silver eyes glimmering in the dim light. Afraid that if you leave, our hope will vanish again. Some believe your arrival is a miracle, others fear it's a curse. Elias sat beside her on a smooth stone bench, the glow of the garden reflecting in his tired eyes. I don't want to be a curse, he whispered. I just want to help. I've spent so long surviving alone. If I can give even a fraction of the hope I feel now, I want to try." Lyra studied him, her face a mix of sadness and awe. "You've been through so much, alone, for more than 100 years. And yet, you carry yourself with strength. Your presence reminds us that even after loss, life can continue. Even after despair, hope can return." Tears welled up in her eyes. Elias had long forgotten what it meant to be seen, not just as a survivor, but as a living symbol of something greater. He reached out, hesitantly touching her hand. The connection was electric and grounding at the same time. In that moment, they were two beings from broken worlds, finding solace in shared understanding. Over the next few days, the Valerians began to open their hearts to him. Some approached him shyly, curious about the stories of Earth, about humans, about a world they had only imagined in their history books. Others still watched from a distance, unsure of how to relate to someone so singular. Every interaction carried weight. Every word was significant. Every glance held the quiet tremor of emotion that could not be hidden. Elias found himself sharing memories, small details of Earth, songs, smells, and the laughter of people long gone. And as he spoke, he realized something extraordinary. The Valerians were listening not just with their ears, but with their hearts. They hung on every word, imagining a connection to a humanity they had almost forgotten. One evening, as the twin suns set and the first stars appeared, Lyra spoke quietly, her voice almost a whisper. "Do you know what your presence does, Elias? You remind us of everything we lost, and everything we can still regain. You are not just a man, you are a symbol, a living thread connecting the past and the future." Elias looked up at the sky, the stars sparkling like the memories of a life he once had. For the first time in over a century, he felt truly alive, not just surviving, but needed. Not just a relic, but a bridge. And in the quiet garden under glowing vines, he allowed himself to hope again. Hope for the Valerians. Hope for humanity. Hope for a future they could build together. Life on Valaris Prime had begun to feel almost normal for Elias. He moved through the city alongside Lyra, sharing stories of Earth, helping Valerian scientists rebuild old hybrid technologies, and teaching them about machines that had been lost to time. Children watched him with wide, curious eyes, fascinated by his humanity. For the first time in a century, he felt a sense of belonging. But not everyone welcomed him with open hearts. A group known as the Purity Circle had been watching him carefully. They were older Valerians, proud and strict, who believed that relying on humans again would bring disaster. They said that the arrival of a male was unnatural, that it might undo everything the Valerians had achieved in the past century. Some whispered that Elias's presence was an omen, a shadow of mistakes long past. One morning, alarms echoed through the crystalline city. Soldiers surrounded Elias's quarters. Their leader, a tall Valerian with braided silver hair and stern eyes, spoke without hesitation. "You are to be taken into custody for the safety of the city. The council has decided your presence is too dangerous to allow." Elias froze. He had expected curiosity, fear, maybe even distance, but this? Imprisonment? After everything, after months of trust building, he felt a sharp ache in his chest. His fingers curled into fists. "What? No! You can't do this," he shouted. Lyra appeared immediately, her armor glinting in the sunlight, her expression a mix of fury and determination. She stepped between Elias and the soldiers. "You will not take him," she declared, her voice ringing across the plaza. "He is no threat. He is our bridge, our hope. You will not imprison him." The soldiers hesitated, unsure, but the Purity Circle had already begun to murmur in the background. Some of the council members supported them, while others leaned toward Lyra, arguing for reason and hope. Tension spread like wildfire, a storm ready to ignite. Elias felt the weight of their doubt pressing down on him. He had come to this world to help, to be part of something larger, and now he was accused of being a danger. His voice trembled as he stepped forward into the open plaza. "You fear what you do not understand," he shouted. "You think I am a threat simply because I am different. But fear did not build this city. Hope did, courage did, and maybe, just maybe, I can help you be stronger than your fear." The crowd fell silent. For a moment only the wind whispered through the crystal towers. Every Valerian in the plaza stared at him, unsure whether to feel anger, hope, or disbelief. Lyra's voice cut through the quiet. "He speaks the truth. Your fear blinds you. Look at what we have become. Look at what we have survived, and yet we hesitate to accept the chance to rebuild something greater. The Purity Circle exchanged glances, their faces tight with tension. But there was something in Elias's words, something in his very presence that stirred something long buried. Hope. Slowly, the murmurs of dissent began to soften. Some council members lowered their heads, ashamed to have doubted. Others nodded, acknowledging that perhaps the time for fear had passed. Elias's chest heaved with relief, but he knew the battle was not entirely over. Trust, once broken, took time to rebuild. Still, as he looked around the plaza at women who had survived a century without humans, he realized that his words had done something. They had reminded them of what they had always known. That hope and courage could overcome fear. That even the impossible could become reality. Lyra reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "You have faced them," she said softly, "and you have made them see. You are more than a visitor, Elias. You are our future." Elias looked up at the twin suns, feeling their warmth wash over him. He had survived alone for over 100 years, faced the void of space and time, and now he stood at the center of a civilization that had almost forgotten what it meant to hope. And in that moment he knew he would not let them down. The battle for trust was won, at least for now. But Elias understood that rebuilding a bridge between two species, long separated by time and fear, would require more than courage. It would require heart, patience, and the unwavering belief that one man could make a difference. Weeks passed, and life on Valera's Prime began to change in ways Elias could hardly have imagined. The city, once cautious and tense, started to open up. Valerians watched him move among their people with a mixture of admiration and wonder. He shared stories of Earth, taught them long-forgotten techniques, and helped repair machinery that had lain broken for generations. Slowly, the walls of doubt built by fear began to crumble. Lyra stayed at his side every step of the way. She worked tirelessly alongside him, learning, observing, and sometimes teasing him with curiosity about the ways of his lost world. Elias, in turn, was fascinated by her culture, the careful rituals, the unspoken strength in every movement, and the depth of emotion that shone in her silver eyes. Together they spent long hours in labs and workshops, rebuilding ancient devices and creating new systems that blended human ingenuity with Valerian brilliance. One evening, after a long day of work, Lyra led him to the gardens that glowed softly under the twin suns' fading light. The flowers' bioluminescence shimmered in shades of blue and green, and the air smelled sweet like rain on alien soil. Children played nearby, laughing and chasing glowing insects. It was a moment of peace, a rare pause in the constant rhythm of progress and adjustment. "Do you ever miss them?" Lyra asked quietly, breaking the comfortable silence. "Your people, your home?" Elias looked up at the twin suns setting over the crystalline towers. His gaze softened. "Every second," he said honestly. "But I also know I can't go back. Earth is gone, my people. They didn't survive. If I stay here, I can help something new grow, something bigger than me. Something worth surviving for." Lyra smiled softly, her silver eyes glowing with admiration. "Then you will not do it alone," she said. "We will rebuild together." For the first time in his life, Elias felt the weight of belonging. He wasn't just a visitor, a relic of a forgotten age or a symbol. He was part of a living civilization, helping it heal, guiding it into a future that had seemed impossible. And Lyra's presence, steady and supportive, filled a space in his heart he hadn't realized was empty. Over the following days, Elias began to train Valerian engineers in hybrid technologies. They learned quickly, their minds sharp and creative, their hands steady. The children who had once stared in awe now followed him curiously, asking questions, imitating his gestures, laughing at his awkward attempts at alien music. With every small victory, Elias could feel the city's energy shift, from cautious hope to vibrant anticipation. Lyra often stayed late with him, reviewing plans and offering advice. Their conversations drifted from work to stories of home to dreams for the future. Elias told her about the oceans of Earth, the smell of rain on dirt, and the songs humans sang to comfort themselves. She listened with fascination, eyes bright, sometimes reaching out to touch his arm or brush a strand of hair from his face. "You know," she said one evening, "we never imagined that humans could teach us so much. Even after all this time." Elias chuckled softly. I never imagined I'd find a place in a world so different from my own. But somehow here I am, and somehow it feels right. Lyra nodded, her gaze lingering on him. You remind us of everything we lost, and everything we can still become. You are not just a human male. You are hope made flesh. Elias looked around at the glowing gardens, the bustling city beyond, and the people whose lives had been changed by his presence. For the first time in over a century, he felt a quiet pride. He had survived impossible odds, crossed time itself, and now, standing here beside Lyra, he knew that one person could indeed change the course of a civilization. The twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Elias felt the warmth on his face, the laughter of children in the air, and the steady hand of Lyra beside him. In that moment, he understood that survival was not enough. True life was about connection, purpose, and the courage to rebuild, even when the past seemed lost forever. And as the stars began to shine, Elias allowed himself to hope again, not just for the Valerians, not just for himself, but for a future where two worlds could rise together, stronger than ever before. Years passed, and Valeris Prime transformed under the care of its people and the guidance of Elias. The once cautious and wary alien women now moved freely among their city, their hearts lighter, their smiles wider. The children of the city ran through streets and gardens, laughing as they chased glowing insects and danced beneath the twin suns. And in their eyes, Elias saw something extraordinary, glimpses of himself, reflections of humanity, and the spark of hope that had been missing for over a century. Elias had changed too. Time had etched lines on his face, silver streaks in his hair, and yet he carried himself with the quiet strength of a man who had survived the impossible. He had become more than a visitor. He had become a part of this world. His presence had sparked a renaissance of knowledge, innovation, and culture. Machines long thought lost hummed again. Cities glimmered with renewed life, and through it all, the bond between humans and Valerians was stronger than it had ever been. Lyra stood beside him on a hill overlooking the city. Her robes flowed in the gentle breeze, and her silver eyes reflected the golden light of the setting suns. Together they watched the children play, their laughter echoing across the valleys. They call this generation the Dawn Children, she said softly. Half of you, half of us. They are the living proof of what you've made possible. Elias looked down at the city, feeling a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the suns above. Then humanity is not lost after all, he said quietly. It lives on in them, in you, and what we've rebuilt together. Lyra's hand found his, and she squeezed it gently. No, she said with a smile. It was never lost. It was waiting for someone to come back, waiting for you. The children ran past them, giggling as they stumbled and tumbled, unaware of the weight of history on their small shoulders. Elias's eyes followed them, and he felt tears prick at the corners. He had spent over 100 years alone, drifting in silence, thinking the universe had forgotten him. And now, he stood on a hill surrounded by life, laughter, and the living proof that one person could indeed make a difference. The twin suns dipped lower, turning the sky into shades of orange, pink, and violet. The light caught on the crystal towers, making them shimmer like 1,000 stars. Elias felt a strange calm settle over him. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable. But here on Valeris Prime, he had found purpose, family, and a future worth fighting for. Lyra leaned her head against his shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper. Do you ever think about the past? All the time, Elias admitted. But the past is gone. What matters is now, and now we have a future. Together they watched as the first stars began to pierce the twilight sky. A gentle wind rustled through the gardens and towers, carrying the laughter of children, the hum of machines, and the quiet promise of tomorrow. Elias realized that he was no longer just a man lost in time. He was a symbol of survival, hope, and courage. A single human male had fallen through a broken sky, but in doing so, he had given life back to a civilization, a people, and a dream. And as night fully embraced Valeris Prime, Elias felt a hand on his arm, Lyra's warm presence grounding him. The city shimmered, the children slept, and the legacy of one man stretched out across the land like the light of 1,000 suns. A century had passed since the last human male had disappeared. Now, thanks to Elias, humanity had returned, not just in body but in spirit, hope, and memory. He had crossed time and space, faced solitude and fear, and in the end, He had proven that even one person could change the universe. Elias smiled, looking at the horizon where the twin suns had set and the first stars glimmered. He whispered softly to himself, "Humanity never truly dies. It finds a way, it survives, and it loves." And in that quiet moment the galaxy seemed to agree. Hope had returned, life had returned, and the legacy of one man would never be forgotten.